This is the video on how LM1 got revenge for his son. Now, if you don't know who LM1 is, he's a well-known individual in Mexico who is a part of one of the cartels. There's other guys also like him. I believe there's LM2 as well. Basically, he's well-known and part of one of the most powerful cartels in Mexico. And this story basically is going to explain how he got revenge for his son. Let's get into it.
April 18th, 2008, Culiacan, Sinaloa, Mexico. Assassins from a Mexican cartel ambushed and killed 20-year-old Atanasio Torres Acosta. Unlucky for them, Torres Acosta was the son of the infamous Sinaloa cartel leader LM1. And with the death of his son, LM1 went crazy. He became a demon, killing anyone who had his hand in his son's death. And in this video, I'll be telling you his story. LM1, whose real name is Manuel Torres Felix, was born on February 28, 1958, in Cosala, Sinaloa, Mexico. He's brothers with Javier Torres Felix, aka LJT. LJT was a very close friend and associate of Ismael
LJT.
Gambada, a high-ranked drug lord of the Sinaloa cartel. Now obviously, with this piece of information, you don't need anyone to tell you that LM1 was probably around a lot of guns and drugs growing up. But eventually, as he grew older, he joined the Sinaloa cartel himself. By the 90s, LM1 had risen up the ranks in the cartel. But the real test of his courage came when his brother Javier was arrested by Mexican authorities. January 27, 2004, Javier was arrested from his house in San Miguel and was extradited to the U.S. on charges related to drug trafficking. However, with his brother gone, it was time for LM1 to step up. He was put in charge of the cocaine shipments coming in from South America into the Mexican states of Chiapas and Oaxaca. And this was an extremely important task for LM1. He even worked hand in hand with El Chapo's son, Ovidio Guzman Lopez. This gave him a lot of power within the cartel, but it also made him a huge target for the #1 rival of the Sinaloa cartel. They go by the name of the Beltran Leyva organization, aka BLO. These guys are the ones solely responsible for transforming LM1 from a normal drug dealer to a killing psychopath. The Cartel War. The Sinaloa cartel and Beltran Leyva organization were once an alliance because they both operated out of the small state of Sinaloa. However, around 2008, BLO split from this alliance with the Sinaloa cartel and El Chapo. The reason? Well, one word: greed. Both cartels wanted supreme dominance, and there was no other way than for one of them to go down. The bond between these formidable organizations goes way back to the 1980s, when the idea of drug trafficking was still new in Mexico. Alfredo, Arturo, Carlos, and Hector, the four brothers who founded BLO, grew up in the poor countryside of Mexico, not so far from El Chapo. They all got into the drug trafficking business the same way. First as small-time poppy producers, then as hitmen and distributors for the largest organizations, such as the Guadalajara cartel. In 1993, when El Chapo...
Man, there is so many of them damn cartels, bro. It's damn near hard to keep up with them. The only major ones that everybody I feel like knows is Sinaloa, CJNG, or Jalisco New Generation Cartel, and Los Zetas. But, bro, it's so many of them.
Was arrested for the first time in Mexico. The Beltran Leyva brothers were the ones who aided and funded his escape in 2001. And that's just to put into context how close these guys were. They also provided manpower for El Chapo and the Sinaloa cartel during its war against the Gulf and Juarez cartels.
What'd I just say?
At some point, authorities thought they were all one big cartel. Until 2007, when rumors began spreading of a possible BLO-Zetas alliance. If you didn't know, Los Zetas is another criminal organization that operates out of Mexico. They broke away from the Gulf cartel because they got stronger and had more influence in their district. Many people say they're the reason behind the fall of the Gulf cartel. And maybe that's true because at that time, Los Zetas were said to be the largest criminal organization in Mexico. Los Zetas controlled the drugs trafficked through the eastern seaboard of Mexico, and an alliance would complement the BLO's control of the western coastline, completely knocking out the Sinaloa cartel out of the operation.
Alright, let's try this out. Let's see. Let's go to the left, but we need more troops. Oh man. Okay, yes, we got a troop upgrade.
That's just one side of the story. The other side is that the Beltran Leyva brothers lived a very lavish lifestyle. For drug dealers, you'd expect them to be discreet in their operations, right? Well, not for these guys. Their faces were all over the news, pictured with top security men and Mexican politicians, while other times they were seen at glamorous parties with top Mexican actresses and famous singers. But the worst of all was that one of the brothers, Alfredo, alias El Mochomo, was married to El Chapo's cousin, so his loud lifestyle was indirectly endangering El Chapo's cousin. On one hand, El Chapo didn't want to lose the BLO-Sinaloa alliance, but on the other hand, he needed to stop them from being all over the place, else he'd go down with them. El Chapo then struck a deal with the Mexican army. He traded the release of his son, who was in prison, Ivan Archibaldo, for intel that eventually led to the arrest of Alfredo Beltran Leyva.
What?
And oh boy, the Beltran Leyva brothers were furious about this move from El Chapo. I mean, no one knew for certain whether or not he actually did this, but it was pretty clear that he snitched to the feds. We all know the Sinaloa cartel had a secret alliance with the Mexican government, but the bottom line was that Arturo Beltran Leyva took it upon himself to avenge his brother's arrest. He went after El Chapo, his ally Ismael Zambada Garcia, aka El Mayo, and every other leader under the Sinaloa cartel, including LM1. The first attack was on El Chapo's 22-year-old son, who was gunned down by 20 Beltran Leyva cartel hitmen as he exited a shopping mall in Culiacan. This was followed by as many as 116 murders, 24 of them being members of the Mexican Authority. But the one death that stood out in this attack was that of LM1's son, Atanasio Torres Acosta. The Rise of the Demon. April 18th, 2008, just outside the health ministry in the Montebello residential district of Culiacan, LM1's 20-year-old son, Torres Acosta, was ambushed by a bunch of sicarios working for the Beltran Leyva cartel. Torres was ambushed with his 4-year-old sister, Alondra, and LM1's sister-in-law, Rivas Heredia. The sicarios tried to kidnap Torres Acosta, but he resisted, making them open fire and killing him on the spot. The shots fired hit the 4-year-old girl on her right arm and shoulder, while it hit LM1's sister-in-law on her left leg. After the killing of Torres Acosta, the police found the escape vehicle used by the sicarios. And inside the vehicle was the major thing that made LM1 lose his mind. They found an AK-47 and a written message that read,
"On behalf of your friend and his nephews, Los Zetas, so you can understand, Manuel Torres."
This message flipped a switch in LM1's head, making him a completely different person. He went crazy and was out for revenge. A few days after the death of his son, LM1 asked the men under his command to round up as many members of the BLO or Los Zetas and tie them up in his ranch for torture. This was the moment the real psychotic side of LM1 came to life. He tortured every man before killing them in cold blood. One of LM1's victims was the municipal police commander, Roberto Carlos Barcelo Villagran. LM1 had his back sliced to ribbons with knives, his legs cut off, and then his head cut off while he was still alive. Like damn, I can't even imagine that. But anyways, his body was dumped with 2 others in the trunk of a car, while his sicarios took the bodies of other victims and dumped them all around Culiacan. And maybe you thought 1 or 2 or maybe even 5 deaths would have quenched LM1's quest for revenge, right? Well, it didn't. And every man he killed, he became more and more emotionally unstable. And also with every passing death, the war between the Beltran Leyva and the Sinaloa cartel grew out of control. Beginning of the end. Torturing these men earned LM1 the nickname El Ondeado, which means the crazy one. He tortured and killed more than 30 different BLO sicarios and ordered the killings of hundreds more. But as much as he was a killer, LM1 was a very smart man. He knew he was wanted, so he made sure he never went out of his hometown, and also made sure the BLO or Los Zetas sicarios he killed were brought to his personal ranch. Also, during his killing spree, he worked with Ismael Zambada Garcia, aka El Mayo, to control some of the affairs of the Sinaloa cartel. However, the city of Culiacan was now looking like a scene straight out of a horror movie. The streets were stained with blood and there were dead bodies at almost every corner. The Mexican government then launched an operation to stop the violence by sending 2,000 troops into the city. And I gotta tell you right now, this operation was one of the reasons behind the fall of LM1. September 2008, one of LM1's safe houses was raided by authorities. They found firearms, drugs, and an armored vehicle. But the most important thing they saw in this safe house was a clear picture of what LM1 looked like. He was seen in a photo with Michel Torres Urea, aka LM2. Michel Torres was LM1's
I knew it. I told you.
nephew and son of Javier Torres Felix. This photo circulated the media, putting more targets on LM1's back. By 2011, LM1 was officially on the blacklist of the Foreign Narcotics Kingpin Designation Act by the US government. There are only two ways of exiting this list, by imprisonment or by death. There's no in between. And at this point, you'd expect LM1 to maintain a low profile, right? Well, this man was long dead inside. He didn't give a damn about the US government coming after him. And maybe, just maybe, his lack of care was what led to his death. October 13th, 2012. In Oso Viejo, Culiacan, Sinaloa, LM1 was in a vehicle convoy with his bodyguards when they were intercepted on the highway by Mexican federal forces. They tried to evade him, but there was no way out. What LM1 and his men didn't realize was that several days before the incident, members of the Mexican Special Force and the 9th Military Zone had triangulated his exact location, just waiting for him to come out of hiding. The Mexican military had stationed armed men at every corner of the city, so there was no way out. There, in the heat of the moment, LM1 got down from the vehicle he was riding and tried to flee through the hills. However, he was gunned down right on the spot. His body was wasted with 6 bullets, one in the abs, one in his left thigh and lower leg, while the rest hit the torso. LM1 died, but as a way to pay homage to his son, whom he started the entire killing spree for, he was buried at a cemetery outside the city of Culiacan, where the remains of his son Atanasio lie too. But that's not even the end of the story. As structured and sophisticated as the Sinaloa cartel was, and has always been, the death of LM1 had a huge impact on its operations. For one, the presence of the Mexican army increased drastically in the state of Culiacan, and then 3 days after the death of LM1, banners were set up throughout the city accusing Ismael Zambada Garcia of betraying and setting up LM1 to be killed by Mexican authorities. The Sinaloa cartel took a few weeks to readjust their chain of command and flow of operations before deciding to go after the Beltran Leyva organization. The BLO knew the Sinaloa cartel would be coming, so they finally entered an alliance with Los Zetas. However, this was the period El Chapo came back on top to handle the operations of the Sinaloa cartel. El Chapo instructed his sicarios to go after members of the BLO and kill them without thinking twice. Then, after the death of one of its leaders, Arturo Beltran Leyva, the cartel has been on an endless downslide ever since. Now, LM1 is gone, El Mayo's a fugitive, and El Chapo's incarcerated at the toughest prison in the United States, the ADX Florence. But even without these men, the Sinaloa cartel still operates the same. They still traffic the same amount of narcotics across the Mexican border.
And basically nothing's going to stop, even though the head dog is locked up. They're still going to do what they're going to do to make their money. But that is the story of LM1 and how he got revenge for his son. I feel like that's pretty insane, but pretty reasonable at the same time, because what would most people do if their son got killed by a rival gang, drug cartel, people who are operating outside of the law? You're gonna spaz out and you're gonna get revenge for your son. Most people. Really understandable reaction. I ain't gonna lie. If I was involved in that kind of lifestyle, I'd do the same thing. And they shot the little girl and the woman too. Oh my gosh. Appreciate you guys for watching. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. I'm gonna catch y'all in the next video. Make sure you follow me on Instagram. That link will be in the description. I'm gonna see y'all in the next one. I'm gone.